Greetings. I'm Paul, and this is Ask Paul. Let's see what we have today. Got a list here. Michael in Germany. Hey, V Gates. I lived in Germany for a while, and that's that. Links, Rex, and geradeaus. Dankeschön, and beer. I don't remember many other words. Sorry, I digress. What are the mandatory requirements for a listening room having its inherent early reflection patterns, allowing a stereo system, the loudspeakers in particular, to reproduce the recorded signal? Boy, well, let's talk about that, because there are no good set rules, because it's kind of different for every room. But there are some things in general that we could say about early reflections and rooms. So first off, what do we refer to? What do we mean when we say early reflections? What do we mean when we talk about things reflecting, and what are they reflecting off of? Sound coming out of a loudspeaker are pressure waves that radiate out from the drivers. If you had your loudspeaker in a field that was up on a pillar, and you're out in a field and you played that loudspeaker, there would be almost nothing but empty space for it to play into, and it would be quite happy without any reflections. Place that same speaker into a room, and now what happens? You have ceilings and floors and walls, objects that the sound hits and reflects off of, okay? And that can be a problem, because what we want is to have the sound reach our ear and not have a delayed signal reaching it later, because that just causes confusion. So you can imagine that if I have a loudspeaker here and I'm sitting here, that direct sound is going to take this long to go. But if this sound bounces off a wall and then hits my ear, it takes longer for the sound to go there and come over here, and therefore I get a delayed reflection off the sound, and it's confusing to the ear-brain combination. So what do we do about it? Well, I have always been a big advocate of diffusion rather than absorption, and there's a couple of reasons why. So imagine if you had walls in your room that were very absorptive, right? So when the signal comes out of the speaker and it goes over to the wall, if you had a perfect absorber, it would just not reflect. It would be absorbed, and you'd think it would be somewhat like out in the field that I described. Unfortunately, there are two things wrong with that. One, we kind of need our room, and we depend on these reflections to create sound that is pleasing to us. If you have a completely dead room, the sound will also sound kind of dead. So we don't want it to be completely dead. We depend on those reflections because we're used to hearing sound within a room. The second thing to consider about absorption is that it is very difficult, unless you have a true anechoic chamber, which most of us don't, to absorb all frequencies. Typically, what happens is you try and absorb frequencies, you nail the high frequencies really well, but as the frequency lowers down into mid-range and lower frequencies, they are much more difficult to absorb, and therefore you get this skewed frequency response of reflections. A much better way to do it is called diffraction or diffusion. Diffusion scatters the sound evenly with frequencies if you've got a good diffuser. Now, the sound still hits the ear, but because it is scattered, because it is not directly reflected, the ear tends to consider that more noise to be ignored. It can't make a lot of sense out of it, so it somewhat ignores it. And you hear the direct sound coming. And so you don't have a dead room, and you're able to ignore those reflections. And that is typically done, if you want it in the simplest way, you want to put a diffuser at the point of first reflection from the loudspeaker to your ear. And that point of first reflection is pretty easily done by simply having a friend stand along the sidewall, hold a mirror, and that mirror is going to be here, right in front of his face. And as he moves, you're watching. As soon as you see the tweeter, so you're sitting here, here's the loudspeaker, and your friend is here, moving in this plane along the sidewall, holding a mirror. And as that person moves, all of a sudden you'll see the tweeter, which means you have a direct shot between the loudspeaker and the tweeter. So you have the exact point where that sound is going to hit and then reflect back. And that is where you put your diffuser. So just a bit of a brief explanation. There's much more to know about rooms, but that ought to give you some help. Anyway, auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss. Bye-bye.